I'd like to welcome everyone for being here and thank you for being here today. I would like to acknowledge that we are within the territory of the Shuswap First Nation. We are at the regular board meeting of Thursday, November 28th, 2019, and I'd like to call us to order. We have an amended agenda that is in front of us today, and I'm going to further amend it. Under new business, I'd like to add item number 9, intergovernmental meeting. And I will also look around to the directors and to staff to see if there's any other items that do need to be added to this agenda. Okay, seeing nobody jumping up, I'm going to ask for a motion to adopt our amended agenda. So moved and seconded. All those in favor? Motion carries. First thing we have is our minutes of our regular board meeting of November 14th, 2019, Annex A, pages 1 through 9 in your package. Are there any, can I have a motion for receipt and adoption, please? Is there an amendment? Okay, sorry.
On page 1, under election of vice chair, it was actually Director Beamish that nominated Director Seegers, not Chair Pratt.
Okay. Chair Pratt was chairing. Yes. Okay, so noted. Any other changes, errors, omissions, additions, deletions? Seeing none, may I ask for a motion to adopt and receive the minutes as amended? So moved, seconded. Any further? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries. Any business arising from the minutes or unfinished business? Director Seegers.
Recommendation 1, I request that that be forwarded to the District of Shuswap as soon as possible, given that we're in talks with putting our RFP, etc., out for our space.
Okay, and so for recommendation number 1, that's in referring to the collaboration options for corporate space and site planning. Is there anything that staff would like to comment on that?
No, thank you, Chair. We'll proceed with that. Right
okay. Thank you. And Director Seegers?
Recommendation number 6. I'm just wondering if that meeting has been held or set up.
Yes. Perfect. Done? Okay. Perfect. All right. I had one in regards to, now I just have to find the page it's on. In regards to the youth engagement, I met with, page 7, under Director's Report. It's under new business there, on page 7 of the agenda, or pardon me, the minutes. Our package. I did meet with the school board chair to inform her and talk about next steps, and did tell her that we would have a formal letter coming soon. So, but they're really happy to hear. I just didn't want to her to hear about it through a media source, but so we did talk about that. Okay. Yes, Director Seegers.
Recommendation 9 with regards to the Community Resiliency Investment Program grant application. Just a request that when it come forward for the letter of support, request for letter of support, we know what the date is by when you need it back, because the application has already gone in. So I know we want to turn it around fairly quickly.
Okay. Okay. Directors, any other business arising from the minutes? Okay, seeing none, we have no presentations or delegations today. We do have reports. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask for a receipt of all the reports, please. So moved, seconded. All those in favor? Motion carries. First off is Annex B, pages 10 to 15, the Planning and Community Development Committee recommendations from November 14th, 2019. Some of these were previously adopted. Directors, do you want to pull out any of these recommendations before we move them as a whole? Yes, Director McMahon?
I don't know if this is the right place, but I had a process question. We get all these recommendations, and for instance, last Transportation Committee asked for a number of letters to be written. So what is the process after that? Like, does that go back to the chair of that committee? Does it go back to the committee's next agenda. What's the follow-up when we ask for a letter?
I'll go to our process person, the corporate officer, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the committee minutes would be forwarded to the standing committee, and then at that time the board would decide which recommendations they'll pull for action. And then those recommendations then become board recommendations, and they're acted upon by staff. And if there's follow-up with the committee, or if the committee wants follow-up, that could be something they could include in the resolution. So, for instance, if it's a letter and they would like to see a copy of the letter, we can also make sure that goes back to a subsequent agenda, if that helps.
Director McMahon?
So do these letters go into our correspondence file or somewhere? Because,
Yes.
yeah.
They exist. So if you would like to see a copy of the letter, we will have copies of those letters.
I think that would be great, because we do ask for a lot of letters, and then they sort of slide off my attention span.
Just to clarify, so are you requesting that we might consider copies of outgoing correspondence in the director's correspondence file? Yes?
Yes, I think so. Do you want to, because that's not typical, that's just a procedural thing.
Yeah.
We don't need a motion for
We
that?
don't need a motion.
Okay.
I'll make note of it.
Yeah, but that would be helpful, because at least then we have a record of it, and
Yes.
that we know that it's gone out and when it's gone out.
Okay.
And what was said. Yeah, what we said. What did we ask for this time? Yes, thank you. Okay. Okay. So we've answered the process question. So once again, I'll ask directors if there's any one of those recommendations from planning on Annex B, if there's any of those recommendations you'd like to pull out before we vote on the block as a whole. Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to adopt those recommendations. So moved, seconded. All those in favor? Motion carries. Next on the list, Annex C, our Infrastructure Services Committee recommendations, numbers 1 through 14 of November 21st, 2019. Directors, would any of you like to pull out any of those recommendations to speak to individually? Seeing none, move adoption. So moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries. Okay, next up on our list is the part of the amended agenda from earlier today, the Corporate and Administrative Services Committee recommendations numbers 4 and 7 on pages 21A of your package. Directors, would you like to discuss either one of those separately or move them as a whole? Move adoption of both recommendations. And seconded. Any further discussion on those? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries. Okay. Next up, Annex D, pages 22, 23 of your package. I'm going to go over to the corporate officer. This is the 2019-2020 chair appointments.
Thank you, Chair. The chair appointments just need to be affirmed by the board, and we put them on the agenda just for transparency purposes for public notification.
Thank you. And I'll just make a note for directors. I've spoken with everybody over the last couple of months, and also via email, just to ascertain the interest level or the nominations for chair of a committee in one case. Sorry, Director Toth. We're in a good rhythm with everything, and it's nice to have a municipal director chairing planning, which is typically a very rural area issue. So thank you very much, Director Toth, for taking on that chairship, and to the directors that nominated him in offering to help with housework in his home, because he'll be taking more time away. So may I ask for a motion that the list of chair appointments be affirmed, please? So moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Yes, Director Seegers.
And when do they take effect?
Oh, good question.
Thank you, Chair. As soon as the motion is adopted.
Okay. All right. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries. Okay, thank you. Next up, we have no communications, we have no motions, but we have bylaws. So we're going to start with Annex E, the Roberts Creek Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw, number 641.12, 2019. It's pages 24, 25 of your package, and we're going to have second reading at this meeting. And the voting for this is electoral area directors only, with one vote each. So may I have a motion for the second reading of Roberts Creek Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 641.12, 2019? So moved and seconded. Okay, all those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. Next up, Annex F, Sunshine Coast Regional District Amendment Bylaw number 310185, 2019. We're having second reading once again. This is only electoral area directors with one vote each. So may I have a motion for the Sunshine Coast Regional District Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 310.185, 2019. Motion for second reading, please. So moved and seconded. Okay, all in favor? Thank you. Motion passes for second reading. Next up, we have our director's reports. And I am going to start with Director McMahon, please.
I had a feeling you were going to do that. Seeing as how, well, we have an upcoming discussion about how directors report back, but I thought I should be thorough this time around. So since our last board meeting, on November the 15th, I was at the Gibson's Chamber of Commerce Board representing the SCRD. On the 16th, I met with the Reed Road Forest Committee of the Elphinstone Community Association. On the 17th, I attended an Extinction Rebellion event at Kinsman Hall. On the 18th, I had the Fire Commission meeting in Gibson's, and then I attended the track AGM, which was really interesting and lots of fun. On the 19th, I had a phone call with Ken Nash from Modi about our roads. I went to the Islands Trust meeting. I attended the Thrive Women's Business Group in Gibson's, and then I went to Gibson's Council, where their youth councillors were sworn in. On the 21st, I went to the library stakeholders reception, which was a great event with a wonderful little PowerPoint presentation about the library, really well done. And the library expressed their appreciation to the SCRD for the great work we do with maintenance, particularly. On the 23rd, I attended the Elphinstone Community Association Winter Potluck at Chester House. We had a full house there by the time you got the chairs, the tables, the food, and the people in. There was at least 30 people there. And it was great. And on the 25th, we had the intergovernmental meeting in Gibson's. On the 26th, I had a meeting here with planning staff and then attended the Agriculture Advisory Committee, and then I went to the Farmers Institute meeting after that. And on the 27th, which is yesterday, I was at our APC, where we wrestled with some interesting questions about what are private roads and are they good things or bad things or whatever. That was actually a pretty interesting discussion. That's a lot of meetings, I gotta say. I find myself these days on a day when I don't have a meeting sort of flailing around going, oh dear, what should I do with myself? But I'm not going to have that problem in the next couple of weeks. Coming up, I just wanted to mention two things. Tomorrow afternoon, there is the screening of the film The Human Scale at 4 o'clock at the Seaside Center. That looks like an interesting film, and I'll be attending that. And on Monday, weather permitting, I will be over in Nanaimo for the AVICC Climate Action Committee. And if any of the directors have particular issues or concerns they would like me to take there, or if you'd like to see the agenda or the minutes of the previous meeting, I'd be happy to forward them.
Thank you, Director McMahon. So I'm going to go over to Mr. Kroll and the town of Gibsons, and let's hear what's going on down there.
Director McMahon has left me just feeling dizzy, and I didn't have to attend all those meetings. Fortunately, there's a few things that I think I've run into Director McMahon at, but something she referenced was the Gibsons and District Fire Protection Commission meeting. It was a great meeting. The local fire department, I think they're really on board. They gave us a oversight and view of their upcoming budget plan, and I think they've got a really good grasp on things. As referenced also by Director McMahon, we swore in our students on council, which was great, and they also attended the intergovernmental meeting. I think there were some shortcomings with the intergovernmental meeting in that the presentations were long and there wasn't enough sort of intergovernmental dialogue between the various people there. I think the students felt that they were sort of left out in the field. They didn't really get an opportunity to speak other than, hi, here I am. Other than that, there's a few things coming up. Gibson's is looking at doing night markets, winter night markets, which is going to be interesting. They're sort of soliciting, trying to get subscribers to it to turn it into a fundraising event. There's the Festival of Lights coming up in Gibsons, which is there's one in Gibsons too, which is in support of the Salvation Army. December 7th, we will be meeting before then, but just to remind people, all the first responders on the coast are doing, Coast Cable call it Crash the Coast, but we tend to call it Fill the Boot, where everyone's out soliciting funds. Last year, we were able to raise $23,000, which went to the Elves Club, which for a 4-hour fundraising campaign is pretty amazing. And Gibson's, between the fire department and search and rescue, I believe last year we raised about $15,000 of the 23 raised. So a bit of a challenge out there to help fill the boots. Pray for a rainy day. People seem to be more sympathetic to people standing out in the pouring rain collecting money than if it's a bright sunny day, although it does make it challenging for separating and counting the money. Wet plastic money does not handle well. Other than that, it's about it for me.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Director Kroll. Or I guess it's technically still alternate Director Kroll until Tuesday, December the 3rd. So, okay, but we'll just call you Director now. All right. Okay, so I'm going to go to the other end of the coast and the other end of the table. And yeah, Director Lee, Pender Harbour and Egmont, please. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, alphabetically, of course. Oh, we go from the north down. Okay. All right. Area A, it is.
Turn the mic on first. I took my lead from Donna before, and I'm going to talk about some of the committees I attended, or organizational meetings I attended. I attended a FARA meeting, that's Pender Harbour and Area Residents Association. They got about 500 members now. Well, a little over 400 anyways. The thing that caught my attention was the derelict boats. I give you a little update on it, but I thought I'd give you a little more. They've got the first 2 completed now. One was on the beach, and it was just grabbed by an excavator, put on the barge, and ripped into chunks and put on a container right on the barge. Went pretty slick. They said it was lucky it was a little rough that day, so you couldn't see everything they missed. I thought that was funny. The second one was sunk, though, and they tried to pick it up, and it just fell apart. And so they actually had to go to Plan B, and they had to drop the nets down and pick things up and pick the big chunks up, and the little chunks they threw in a net and lifted them. This is kind of a caution because it took 3 days instead of 1 to get rid of that boat. and the contractor doing it is in danger of losing a lot of money on the job. We're supporting him to work with the federal government and see if we can at least get it up to a cost scenario. We'll see what happens. Some of the subcontractors actually are helping by reducing their fees as well for them, because everybody wants to see the boats gone. 4 more boats have been identified, but the good news is they're all still floating, and they're next, and the applications are being prepared, so they're getting ready to do the next 4. They've been talking to some of the local contractors, and they're working to get a streamlined process where it can be handled at a lower cost by in-kind contributions. So that's pretty good. I did mention that the SCRD would probably be arranging a meeting between them and the Dead Boat Society, and they were quite eager to attend that and see if there was some synergies there. I attended a meeting with Rotary Chamber and FARA, all the directors, and Chief Warren Paul and Councillor and Director now, Keith Julius, attended the luncheon, and they were quite warmly received there. And Chief Paul spoke on some of the economic development projects the nation has underway, and I think they kept him quite a long time afterwards. I know how busy he was, but they just kept chatting. It was good to see. The reason I mention that is if you get a chance to do that with one of your local groups and can facilitate it, it's very valuable experience. Friday, December 20th will be the Christmas boat parade up there. You can be sure it's going to be blowing and raining on that day, because it always does. It starts at 5 o'clock in front of the Deer Wharf and goes around the perimeter of the harbor, excluding gunboat. It's actually, if you can get on one of the boats, it's a lot of fun. A lot of people on the beach making noise and waving. And I don't know if it's Christmas cheer or not, but it's still fun. Yesterday was our area APC, and what was striking about that is there was actually 3 delegations attending, 2 for subdivisions and 1 for a lake setback variance. The packages were very well done that they got, and there was something that they took note of, and so did I. One was a setback from the lake. And the biologist that presented on behalf of the proponent presented what I call the no harm part of the setback. And he expressed frustration at our 20-meter requirement when science states a 15-meter setback is the gold standard. Also, there was some confusion about building overhangs and the fact that they can't encroach on a lake, and they didn't know why. And I was thinking we need something that explains how setbacks work in all instances, things like overhangs, some technical detail provided to our APC when they're doing this kind of thing, so they don't have to say, oh, I don't know. You know, it needs to be references to what makes the decision rather than it was made and now you got to fix it. But all in all, the group was quite happy, and I found the meeting very informative. And then the intergovernmental meeting, I got to say, I actually enjoyed it, and I enjoyed all the presentations, but I thought there was too many of them, and we should have had more time afterwards to listen to the governments and have a two-way conversation. And also that we should have made commitments to take action on certain items, I thought. And so that's just something maybe we can consider. But considering I had the greatest distance to go, and I think it was well worth it, it must have been a pretty good meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Lee. We'll go over to West Howe Sound and Area F, Director Schultz.
Thanks, Chair. West Howe Sound, well, storms. It's almost deja vu. On November 17th, residents woke to water running down Fisher Avenue, running into a person's house, going across Marine Drive into another house, and damage and onto the waterfront. Somes Creek was washed out again. Another 250 meters of earth is now in the bottom of the creek. Damage along the shoulder, about 150 meters of shoulder was damaged. Capilano was called out for emergency issues. And one of the striking notes of talking to one of the landowners is that they're not sure if their insurance is going to cover it. They specifically did extra insurance, and now they're not sure. So that's our first line of emergency preparedness, we're told, is home insurance. So what home insurance will actually cover in these times of extreme weather? That's a question that I really don't have an answer for. But it's a concern for people who are told to get insurance, and then you expect the insurance to cover, and they're not sure if it's going to. So it's something to think about in the future. Because last year, on November 26th and 27th, we had a more severe washout at the base of Langdale bypass with flooding and damage, and that still hasn't been repaired. The light standard isn't back yet, so things are. So that's 2 years in a row, almost to the day. So there's also damage on Eastbourne, on Keats Island, on Eastbourne roads going down to the dock. So yeah, it was a difficult time for some people. Yeah. What else can I say? The Fire Commission, the commissioners adopted to move the budget recommendations to round one, so that will be coming forth. Invasive plants came up at the APC and the Agriculture Advisory, and I think people were feeling kind of overwhelmed by this multi-jurisdictional aspect of invasive plants and not really knowing what to do. So I think it's one of these, another concern of people of not knowing what to do. The intergovernmental meeting, there was the presentation about the student trustees, and the one student said, meaningful change. And I just thought that was such a great term, that they're looking for meaningful change, not just meaningful dialogue, but they're looking for meaningful change. So it was just one of those phrases that have really stuck with me. And the other phrase from that intergovernmental meeting was engagement fatigue, which Metro Vancouver has been out in the lead in public participation engagement, and they're finding that the online tools are becoming less subscribed to because people are just feeling overwhelmed with opportunities to engage. And there's only so much engagement kind of in the gas tank to get going. So it's something to, I think about in the future. How do we actually get meaningful engagement for meaningful change when everyone's starting to burn out because everyone is asking these same questions? So it's just, I think people are feeling overwhelmed. I keep getting that sense. I think I'll leave it there. That's enough of death and destruction at West Howe South.
Thanks for being so cheery, Director Hiltz. I appreciate that. Okay. I'm going to go over to my immediate right and Director Seegers and what's up in Sechelt?
Okay, what's been happening in Sechelt? We did the Métis flag raising to honor Louis Riel Day and the Métis in the country and our community. The Downtown Business Association put on a business safety forum. It was a very good turnout of business owners in the downtown area looking at how do they deal with basically personal safety and business safety. As you know, it's been reported in the paper, on the radio, et cetera. There have been a number of break-ins, and they were looking at how do they protect themselves? How do they feel safe? So one of the things that came out of there, there was a panel. The RCMP were there, Vancouver Coastal Health, Mental Health, Jeff McKee, the health officer, Rain City, and Arrowhead. And the RCMP actually said, if you don't know if it's a 911 call or not, phone 911. They'll route it. Because if it should be that you call 911 and you don't and you phone the other line, they're prioritizing the 911 calls, and you won't get help for quite a while. So call 911. If it's not a 911 call, they will kind of punch you off to the side for a little bit for longer turnaround. It was a very good response from all the people in the community. We broke up into groups. We talked about some of the things they could do. They talked about CEPTED. So, is it community? What does it start with? CEPTED. Environmental design for something. Is it crime prevention? That's what it is. Crime prevention through environmental design. That's right. So that's actually a thing. And it's how do you look at your property to ensure that it's lighted properly, there's access is good, somebody driving by can see if somebody's breaking in, all those kinds of things. So they talked about that. They talked about proper lighting. And they had some takeaways from the workshop. So everybody who attended was really happy with it. A number of us, I think our whole council actually stopped in to the Sunshine Coast Community Services Society open house. They have the plan put together, a conceptual plan for the potentially 6-story building they're looking to put up at the end of Inlet. It would have 2 floors of offices and community kitchen, programming, different kinds of things, and then 4 floors of housing for women and children, anywhere from 2 to 3 bedroom units. One of the things they indicated was if they have a mother with 2 children come or more children come, they have to have separate bedrooms for the different children. They have particularly like different sexes. They have to be in separate bedrooms. It's a requirement. So they are looking for 3-bedroom units, which are really hard to find on the Sunshine Coast. So that'll be coming forward to our council at some point in the near future. They want to move forward. They have been approved for funding. Then we had, on Monday and Tuesday of this week, we had the CEO for ICE-T, Lynn Robert, over here on the Sunshine Coast. So ICE-T is the Island Coastal Economic Trust. It's a funding organization that's been set up by the province. They divided up the whole province into various areas and gave them money to give to municipalities and regional governments for economic development initiatives. So we invited her over here to meet with all of the governments, and she did. She met with the governments up and down the coast so we had the opportunity to talk about, does this fit? If so, which program does it fit? And what are your intakes, et cetera. So she was really happy. She responded after she went back and said, thank you for all taking the time to meet with me. I really appreciated the opportunity, and I got to see where you're looking at doing these different initiatives so that we can see how we can support you moving forward. So that was really good. Intergovernmental meeting. At the beginning of the intergovernmental meeting, this is to Director Hiltz. At the beginning of the meeting, Mayor Beamish came up to Director Pratt and I and said, we need to keep track of the action items so we can take them back to our own boards. So I think it'll be coming up in this meeting here, and we'll be taking it up at ours as well. So there are action items, and we will do those. Couple things that came up at council. Funding for police-based victim services. Police-based victim services, number of calls have almost doubled on the Sunshine Coast. So if somebody is the victim of a crime, the RCMP will automatically refer them to this organization to help them deal with the impact of the crime on them. 50% of the funding is to be put forward by the Sunshine Coast. The funding this year by the province is about $76,000, and they will be coming to the regional district and to the town of Gibsons for the share of funding. So we'll need to look at how that happens. We did do some more research on that and found that the province does not fund for the regional district or the town of Gibsons anything towards police-based victim services. It has to come from the local governments. One of the other things on our recent council meeting is we replied to the referrals from the province regarding the 4 cannabis retail stores who applied for licenses, and we approved all 4 of them, or we suggested they go ahead, so we'll see what happens with that. Upcoming in Sechelt, Light the Lights, Saturday on the 30th. Starts at 5 o'clock, followed by the Festival of Lights, which is all the cement trucks and the front-end loaders and stuff covered with lights. Council will be walking the parade route, giving out things to the kids. The next night is Sunday, I think, Seaforth Highlanders annual Ortona dinner. And then next week, Tuesday, I'll be going down and spending a good portion of the day with the RCMP to talk about what services are being provided, and then also doing some advocacy for additional services. So that's it. And then I see everybody back here on Wednesday next week.
Is there something going on Wednesday next week? Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Yeah. Terrific. Thank you, Director Seegers. Over to Roberts Creek. Director Ties, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I was invited to present to the Scouts at camping, and got to sit down with them and talk recycling. So that was fun. Got to take my daughter along. We got some free ice cream and a plaque out of it, so that was good return on investment. That was on my way to the OCP committee meeting. Not much to report there this time. We did have the OCP committee elections last night, and we have 3 new members, potentially 4. We'll see how it goes. But we're back to a full complement of 11, so that's great. And after the elections, the RCCA, Roberts Creek Community Association, for those of you who don't know what that acronym is, put on a short movie. It's about 25 minutes long, from David Roche and Marlena Blavin, and it documents the presentations that they do to the elementary schools on a regular basis, and it's really worth seeing. It has a lovely message, and they've been doing this off and on for about 20 years. It's called Love at Second Sight, and you can find it on YouTube. So it's about 25 minutes out of your time. Love at Second Sight. Really, those kind of engagements by Roberts Creek residents makes me proud to be part of that community. So they do a wonderful thing. I was also at the Islands Trust meeting. I was also at the intergovernmental meeting. And one more thing that came up in the last couple of weeks is some impatience about bike lanes and what's happening, and as well as taking care of invasive species, especially on Moti right away. But that conversation is ongoing. Yes, we're well aware of it, but it's been reiterated that there's some impatience there. And that's it for Roberts Creek. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Ties. Yeah. Invasives, I think that's a theme, because I heard about invasives as well this week. I'll go over to Director Toth and for your report.
Thank you. Director Seegers covered off of most everything I was going to mention, so I'm not going to. Thank you. So I don't have a whole lot to report this time. I was at the Islands Trust meeting, and it was really good and interesting to hear about the way their organization works, because we know that we work with them, but we don't really know how we work with them. So at least for me, that was a good sort of learning opportunity. I was also at the intergovernmental meeting. There's over 40 people there from elected bodies and staff, which was really cool. I missed the first one, so it was neat. It was almost too big to facilitate discussions and things like that. I know it's up on the agenda here, but at council we talked about banning crabbing and fishing on the Davis Bay Pier on an interim basis. And before going from 0 to 60, we're going to try and do a site visit with the community association there and members of our harbor committee to try and see if there's any sort of incremental improvements we can make to keep swimming and fishing more separated. As was mentioned, Light the Lights this weekend with the Parade of Lights in downtown Sechelt. There's also Kids Crafts that's going to be in Trail Bay Mall from 2 to 4. And I wanted to mention to Director Ties that the Scout group absolutely loved your visit. That's my daughter's Scout group. And they will be issuing you a formal invitation to their BP dinner in February. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Toth. Baden-Powell, right. Okay, so I will finish up with director's reports. I won't comment on I've been to a lot of the same meetings you all have. I had my APC on Tuesday night, invasive species, of course, as well as there's a dock application that we were looking at in that area, in the Huffman Bay area. Something interesting I did on the 18th and 19th of last week is where I had the two roles of my life, or two of my roles, collide, where I was asked by my real estate brokerage to give a talk on what it looks like to be a realtor that's also involved in elected office. So that was interesting, and I think a little bit eye-opening for people that don't know what we do in elected office and what kinds of things they need to know, which ties in really well to one of the conversation items that we had earlier today at CAS about, it's really important for the people that are acting as agents to sell, knowing what government rules are and what's coming up and down the pike. Because they're really, if you have somebody moving into a community, usually one of their very first points of contact is somebody who's going to be either selling them or helping them buy or rent or lease either commercial or residential space. So it's really important that they understand what the rules and regulations are and what's going on politically, and because that ties in so closely with the importance of the values of the community. So, and then this evening, I will be speaking to the Rotary Club of Gibsons about the SCRD and what we do, and it was a little bit of an interesting conversation topic at lunch here. I asked the directors, what would you like me to tell them? So we had a nice little conversation about that. So that was great. Otherwise, like I said, I've been to pretty much everything you guys have been. So, what? A little bit more? No, I don't know. I don't know about that, David. I think Darnell got me beat. But with that, I'll move us on to new business. And the next thing we have on our list is the board liaison reporting options. We're going to leave this as a verbal report, but this was something that Director McMahon had brought up. And I think if I characterize this incorrectly, please tell me, that it was with just a little bit of frustration and how we hear back about, now that we're a year in and we have these liaison appointments, what kind of reporting function should we have? Like, how do we talk about it as a board? If there's issues that come up in either these external liaison positions that we have, how we bring those things back to the board. And I'll put it over to Director McMahon to speak.
Yeah, it's partly because we're looking at making these appointments again in December, I believe, for the next year. And I found myself looking at this very long list, which, once again, I don't actually know much about many of these organizations and what's involved in them, because we haven't really been reporting back to each other in a sort of an organized fashion. So that's why I raised the issue, because I actually want to know what's involved in a lot of these positions. And, mea culpa, I have not told everybody, how often the library board meets and how often the Chamber of Commerce meets and what sort of things arise that are relevant to the SCRD and so forth. So I thought we should sort of look at that, not wanting to go into more lengthy director's reports because it burns a lot of time.
Okay. Recognizing it burns time, but it's the only opportunity we really have to tell everyone in a public environment what we are doing. And I'm just going to ask the corporate officer when exactly those board appointments are to be made.
Thank you, Chair. A report will be coming forward to the December 12th board meeting.
Okay. Thank you. So with that, we can discuss when it comes forward at the 12th which ones we may want to just flag as maybe being, is this still something that we want to do? We can talk right now maybe about different options for reporting back to either the board or reporting back to a standing committee. Because right now we do it very informally. The board communications, when we're communicating with the board, it's either via email, oh, hey, something interesting happened, or if it's something we want to action, we bring it to a committee or we bring it to board. But we don't have any kind of, there hasn't been a protocol of, for example, you have to submit a written report on any of your liaison commitments or anything like that. So there's been no formal reporting process or procedure. So that's what I'd like to talk about. So I'll go to Director McMahon and then Director Lee.
I'd like to suggest for the discussion on the 12th of December that each of us who has one of these positions very briefly say what you did in the last year. I think there's a couple of them that haven't even met. But, just briefly describe what it was that you did, how often the group meets, whatever, like how big the commitment is. Because that's one of the things when we first faced this impressive list is you're thinking, oh, my heavens, how many meetings is that? So some information would be helpful.
And that's a fair comment. Director Lee.
I was wondering why a report and on what committees, because we get minutes like of the policing committee and those ones. We get them at the appropriate senior committee. So.
Okay, but so for example, the AVICC Solid Waste Committee, how do you report back on that one?
If we ever had a meeting, I'd tell you.
No, there you go. For example, even the climate change workshop. So there might be different professional development opportunities that we're going to as well that we're not necessarily reporting back to because we have we don't have an actual mechanism for doing so other than our director's reports within our board meeting packages, which has always been verbal in the past. It doesn't have to be verbal. Like if you've been like, for example, the climate change conference that directors Ties and McMahon were at, we had a great synthesis of notes that was emailed out to the directors directly, but it wasn't part of the public record. And there was no, so that's a good example right there. Whereas if we had a policy or a procedure, even if it's informal, that we submit a written report after we've been to a workshop or after we've been to an external committee, or we designate maybe one person to report back on intergovernmental or, that kind of thing. So it's formalizing the reporting back loop because then it keeps our community informed as well. It becomes part of that public record because not only are they investing in the services through taxation, they're also investing in us, and it's important for them to know what we're doing and know how we're using their dollars. I'll go to Director Lee again.
I really appreciated that. Now I understand. So now I think if we have to do that, we better get someone to write it down that we have to do it so we don't forget.
Any other thoughts? Looking to the directors, Director Hiltz.
It's the word that you said just now about the board to me is a service level. It is one of the service that we provide, and this is this ongoing discussion. What is the service level, particularly the electoral area directors? What does the public expect of us to deliver? So I'm having this conversation with people as we go around, but just that concept of, like if you're preparing your evening meal, like who's cooking, who's cleaning, who's doing it up, and how much does everyone pitch in? And that service level idea, so that's kind of, is this another level of service that we're doing from a verbal to a written, and our capacity to do that. So that's kind of, this is something that I've been thinking about over a while. But yeah, I see the board as a service that we provide. And it is a function, and you're taxed based on a function, and And so, so that's my thoughts.
Director McMahon.
I totally see Director Hiltz's point about service level, particularly when we're paid $26.70 a week for being rural directors. Not that I've ever mentioned that here before. But I also think that when we are spending tax dollars to go to a conference particularly, that the value of that is lost if we don't report back to the whole group. And so, like, I wouldn't dream of like a written report on the library every month because it's just not worth anybody's time. Not to insult the library. But when we do go to important things, particularly when we're representing the SCRD at external agencies like AVICC or something, then we really do need to be organized about how we are sharing that information with our fellow directors and also with senior staff, because in many cases they are not attending these events.
Okay, and Director Seekers?
But I'd like to say in a way that we put forward the information that we can absorb quickly. I mean, one of the things that we talked about recently is we currently read about 500 pages a week for meetings. I mean, at least I do, because I mean, I've got other meetings as well. So 500 pages a week, and then all the emails and all the other stuff that comes along. If you send me a 10-page report on your conference, I'm not going to read it. I don't have the time. I might skim it, but I won't read it in depth. So it needs to be in a way that's condensed, consolidated, and impactful.
How about even if, like, just to one page? Okay, so 1 page maximum. If we need to go into, okay.
Okay, so 1 page maximum with links, because every one of these conferences typically will post something, the presentations, etc. Make sure we have the links to the presentations. If we want to, you put a couple of sentences down on each one of the sessions and what struck it for you, and then get, where we can go for more information, and we'll follow those.
Okay. So do we want to formalize that into actually putting it as part of the procedure bylaw, in actually putting it on or just making it as an informal or as an understanding, a custom, as it were, that we will report back on conferences with a meaningful yet short, efficient report, succinct, as it were, report back on either conferences or events, and for conferences and events that we're going to as a board, it would be the responsibility of the board chair to do so, report back, or submit to the board chair too. So, for example, UBCM, AVICC, those are both things that we should have had a formalized written report on. And you realize that after, oh, hey, this could have been done. And so I see it as okay, Director McMahon?
No. I'm just going to say that one of the reasons I do a newsletter is because it helps me actually review and condense what's happened to me in the last month. And when you attend, especially UBCM, my heavens, it is such an overload that you walk away and you're kind of in a daze of information overload. But if you sit down and think about it later, then you can identify maybe the 3 or 4 useful takeaways from the whole experience. And then that's nice and short to share with each other. And we don't always go to the same event, the same streams within the event.
Okay. So looking around, does everybody have an understanding of what your expectations, your other directors have of you? Okay. Do we need to formalize that in any way? No? We're good? Any further discussion on this? Or comments? Questions? We can revisit it. Okay. Certainly. Okay, so the next item on our list is intergovernmental meeting. So the first thing I'll say is that I volunteered us to host the next intergovernmental. You're welcome. I already handed the name plaques over to Tracy, so we can reuse them, which is more environmentally friendly. So one of the things, though, that has come up, I haven't seen the notes from it yet, so I don't know what the action items. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'll have to go back and check my notes on the action items that may have come out of intergovernmental. I'm racking my brain right now, so if somebody else. Water governance and regional growth strategy, right. So those are the action items that we had that came out. But I also wanted this on the agenda to talk about, there were a couple of challenges with this week's intergovernmental meeting, just with space and sound, length of time of presentation, not having the opportunity for maybe more conversation between. And so we don't have to go into too lengthy of a conversation here, but I just wanted to flag it for when we are planning it, where we would like to have it, what kind of format we want to have. Do we want to have presentations? Do we want to have more exchange of ideas? Do we want to do a workshop? Because another thing that we could look at as a group is bringing in a workshop facilitator and actually doing some professional development, because it's a unique opportunity. So I'm going to put it open to who would like to speak and offer some suggestions. One of the things I talked with Tracy about already was potential of different halls that might work quite well, because the sound was a little bit challenging in the market, at the Gibsons Public Market, and we thought maybe the Roberts Creek Hall would be really good for that kind of event, and it has been used there before. So I'm going to look around the table. Okay, I'm going to start Director Lee, and then I'll come down through.
The two items. I thought we should be given a copy of the presentations that were made, the slides. So that should be kind of a routine as it is here. And the other thing is that I think the municipal affairs guy made at the beginning of his presentation give us some new information for us to consider. And that is that municipal affairs job is to ensure that the lanes are followed by the various departments. And that includes the interprovincial and outside the provincial. And I thought that was quite interesting. And I wish he would have stopped at that phase and we could ask questions, and then he'd start on a different theme. But instead he just went right through. But anyways, that's my two suggestions.
I had Director Seekers next.
The presentations on the regional growth strategy, our CAO had one of them and was going to follow up with the other one, so we will get both of those for sure. With regards to intergovernmental, I think first thing we need to do is talk about timing. When would we look at actually having one? We have the Sechelt Nation has their election in February. Their new council comes in April. Do we want to wait until after their election? Do we want to have it? I mean, January is probably too early. Mm-hmm. So we're probably looking at maybe March or April. Yeah. April 1st is when the new council takes over.
Okay. So probably April then, maybe? Okay, so potentially April for timing. Director McMahon.
I know that finding a time that everyone can attend is a real challenge, which is why we ended up with the weird time that we had last week. But I would really like us to build in some informal time before and or after the event for people to just talk, because some of this is networking, getting to know your counterparts in the other governments. And, after an interesting presentation, you may have follow-up questions for people. So this one, just because of the time and so forth, there just really wasn't that opportunity. And if we are going to hold another one between 6 and 8 o'clock, there should be something in the way of food other than cookies. So, just saying.
I've already noted that with Tracy about the refreshments. So I'm going to look to this side. Director Hiltz.
So I'd be starting, is there a policy around what is an intergovernmental meeting? Are there protocol agreements that we're following? Nothing, okay. For me, the closest other one that I attend is the Howe Sound Community Forum, which is intergovernmental, and observers are very much a part of that process, which is both from presentation, but it is also a day-long activity opposed to a couple hours. So, I'm wondering what can possibly be discussed at intergovernmental, and is it a public meeting? These are kind of questions that I have. And legislatively, is there policy? Is there customs? So I really don't. I get invited to them, and I'm going, okay, I'm invited. What are we trying to accomplish? I kind of, sort of know.
Yeah. So it's, okay. So intergovernmental it's just it's an opportunity to get together, network, find out what's going on around the other governments on the coast. It's, well, in the 11 years since I was first elected, they've been pretty much along the same lines. There's been a couple of times we tried to deviate from that by doing more of a workshop format. And when we hosted as the school district, we did do a workshop at one point, which was semi-well received, and just to make it more meaningful. But it was with a lot more people that already knew each other. We're pretty all still, but we're all getting to know each other because of the spirit of collaboration that we have. And so I think we can kick it up a notch and maybe rework the format. So the protocol has always been, or the custom has always been, to get together, everybody gives their update. You might have a presentation or more, depending if there was a big thing coming on. Like for this time, it was the water governance and the regional growth strategy pieces. So, and then every group takes a chance to shine, hey, this is what we're doing, right? So it doesn't have to continue that way. We can choose how we want to host the next one. We can choose to do something that's maybe more professional development related. We can choose to do something like even a visioning exercise. If we could do a blanket exercise if we wanted to as a group. That would be cool. There's a lot. It's essentially up to us and what we task staff with as well, because we have to recognize that even though as directors we take the lead, it will be staff time as well that's put into this. Yes.
So the follow-up to that is when the intergovernmental is when we met with Islands Trust. That would be an intergovernmental. But we're specifically talking about a lower coast local government. That's opposed. So this is one of many intergovernmental meetings. So there's something particular about this one, which is different than our other intergovernmental meetings.
Yes. So this one is all of the governments on the coast, including Islands Trust, has only just been recently invited to these official, from my recollection anyways, and typically haven't been observers welcomed in. There's no reason for them not to be. We're not a decision-making body, and it's not a closed meeting type event either. So, Director Seegers.
So I'm just looking at some dates. AVICC is April 12th to 14th. So we could either do it before and look at some kind of joint, focus at going to AVICC, or after coming back to say how could we take what we've learned there and move things forward. Personally, I prefer having it closed. I know, it's great to have other people around at this forum. I like the idea that we can bounce ideas off of each other and not necessarily be held to it by the community, but take it back and massage it individually at our own boards and tables, and then move things forward or not. But we don't have that opportunity a lot of times to actually, among all of us on the Sunshine Coast, look at what are the issues that we're dealing with? What are some of the things we want to address or tackle? How do we move them forward? We don't have that opportunity in this form. I mean, I really like that. Yeah, the sound, there was some issues with sound and whatever, but it was great to just get the different input from people, even the little we did.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if we find a topic, and I think if we put it out to the, pick a date, put it out to the various organizations and say, throw us agenda items. We can work with those and figure out what we can make impactful and how we can move something forward.
All right, looking around the table, Director McMahon.
Just thought that as great ideas arise, we could forward them to you for possible topics, either directors or staff. We can't cram too much into 2 hours, but, what are the top things that we need to talk about as a region?
Yep. Excellent. Director Kroll?
The reference to the presentations, excuse me, they were a bit long. I think, if we're going to have presentations, there should be a little more sort of condensed. It's good to come up with a theme, and I think some of the themes in the presentations were covered, but they became a little prolonged. And it sort of totally precluded, because of the length of the presentations, and you're doing it in a 2-hour window, it just blew away any opportunity for any meaningful discussion following the presentation. So I think the limit was set at 10. That's probably a little excessive. It could be weighted, I guess, if it's something critical, absolutely critical, maybe a little more time. But, I think it's more valuable to have some key points discussed and then open it for discussion. And I think the discussion is probably going to be more helpful to the community than a lengthy presentation.
Director Seegers? Okay, Director McMahon?
We can bring the gong and have somebody ring it at 10 minutes.
Okay. Please note that Director Seegers will bring a gong. Oh, she'll bring a gong. You could do like a rim shot with the drums and stuff too.
Tibetan bowls.
Oh.
I have Tibetan bowls, like big ones.
Okay. We're going to have to start a band next. I'm going to look for any other discussion. There's no particular action item on this at this time. Pick a date. I will work with staff and to pick a date then and we're looking at April, and either pre or post AVICC, and we'll go from there. Okay, great. Excellent. Okay, so with that, I'm going to say that we will be moving in camera, and so I will be kicking out the audience shortly. However, if you would like to ask us any questions, either to the media, Sophie or Connie, any one of our members of the public that's sitting in so patiently in our audience, listening to us drone on, or listening to me drone on, I guess. Is that it? Anything?
I have a comment I would like to make from the days when we used to both got outside conferences to the union and come back with some very exciting stuff and find that nobody really wanted to hear it.
Mm.
So I think it would be well worth your while if you have gone out and you've come back with stuff that you got paid to go and hear.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important, or you wouldn't have gone.
Mm-hmm.
But it might be a good idea to try and grab a tag from somebody to help you and solve it. The information to them in some creative way. I don't mean gas on the table.
Aw, I wouldn't mind, actually. A creative song.
Bring some souvenirs or whatever it is. I'm particularly thinking of Quadmo's, forgot the other name, this president in Mexico some years ago, and I went to a conference when he spoke, and I was deeply impressed. Came back ready to report to my union, and nobody wanted to hear it.
Oh.
I don't think I've ever gotten over the fact that I should have been
Excellent. We will be bold. Okay. All right. So with that, may I have a motion for us that the public be excluded from attendance at the meeting in accordance with Section 91A, C, E, K, and 2B of the Community Charter? So moved, seconded. All those in favor? Thank you. Thank you all for being here today. Bye-bye now.